Live. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Tuesday, October 15th, 2024. Time for another show. Nonetheless, I did briefly consider there just simply swaying to the music for the next 39 minutes and then running for president because I have no cognitive problems whatsoever. That seems to be the story for this morning. Yesterday in a town hall, or what was supposed to be a town hall meeting of some kind, hosted by the brilliant orator Kristi Noem, Donald Trump decided instead, when the proceedings were interrupted by a medical incident, a different medical incident than the one I'm going to tell you about, a medical incident in the audience, rather than resume the program afterwards, Trump decided, I believe his line was, let's just turn it into a music. And turn it into a music he did. He decided to have them play his personal appearance playlist and dance to it. And he would call out tunes and put on the Pavarotti. Let's listen to Pavarotti. Yeah, all the kids want to hear the Pavarotti. There was all sorts of stuff. And of course, YMCA and play it loud. And he just sways and sort of moves his hands around and half, like Montgomery Burns, fist pump in there as well. And he just decides, what the hell? No more questions. Who the hell wants any more questions? Let's turn it into a music. Oh my God. Well, anyway, something. And of course, it's being treated differently in different, outlets in the press. The AP apparently saying Trump's Pennsylvania town hall turns into impromptu concert after medical incidents. But of course, the concert, such as it was, play the songs that I like from the campaign list thing. The concert was the medical incident. The guy's brain checked out, and he Mitch McConnell froze to music for 40 minutes. Mitch McConnell, the musical, is what they're calling it. That's what I'm saying. I'm calling it. Many people are saying that. And or the alternative, of course, being Awakenings 2, Electric Boogaloo. Like, he's borrowing the will of the music. Just keep it on, and he'll just keep swaying, and then when you turn it off, he shuts down again. All right. As long as he's not in cognitive decline, everything should be fine. Okay. Imagine doing that for 40 minutes. Just put on music. Who the hell wants to hear? I like that too. Who wants to hear questions? It's a town hall. But anyway, yeah, I mean, there's a few other versions of it. Not everybody completely dismissed it, but it's still very odd how they're treating it. They're not quite sure what to do with it. There is a Washington Post article on it. If you want news, you came to the wrong place. There are a couple of great shots of him. There's a little video of him, and his version of dancing. I mean, he's 78. He's not going to be breakdancing, but it's always been horrible, bopping back and forth and swaying. He's waving his hands around. Kristi Noem does not know what to do with this thing, and that might be the most normal thing about her so far. I mean, she could have just spent the time killing puppies or something like that to entertain the crowd. But there she is, trying to dance along and trying to make it look like we're supposed to be playing music and dancing here. But for a very significant portion of the video, even just in these little clips, she's just sort of uncomfortably looking around like he's doing it, so I guess it's okay for me to do it. Not that she had anything to say anyway. Let's see. So here's the Washington Post piece. Trump sways and bops to music for 39 minutes in bizarre town hall episode. By the way, we're still running with the headline of, Kamala Harris, she bobs and weaves rather than answer the questions. Well, he sways and bops to music rather than even allowing people to ask the questions. Don't ask questions. I just want, let's turn it into a music. He couldn't even put that sentence together. I love it. Vice President Kamala Harris, it says in the subheader here, has called Trump, 78, unstable and questioned his mental acuity. And why not? And that was before she knew that this had happened, I think. Marianne Levine wrote the piece for The Post. It was in Oaks, Pennsylvania, apparently. The town hall moderated by South Dakota Governor Kristi L. Noem. Like, why stay in South Dakota and govern the place when you can go to Oaks, Pennsylvania, and listen to music, making a music with Donald Trump. He had the gravelly voice going, too. It wasn't quite as muted as the usual death rattle voice, in case I haven't pointed that out for you here on the show. I've been doing it on Blue Sky, but very often when he gives an interview that he's, particularly one that he's bored with, he starts to mumble his answers. They get kind of quiet, but he's the gravelly voice all the time now, and I don't know what that indicates exactly, but particularly when it's low in volume, we're going to be, we're going to do the tax cut things, and it's very, very important, very important. People got to have death rattle. Now, at the rally, I guess, or this town hall, and then the music, as he called it, I guess had him kind of excited. So he's got the microphone, he's got it a little closer into his face, but it's still the gravelly voice. It's very odd, and I don't know. Someone ought to check him out, or could just ignore the symptoms, and eventually they'll go away at some point, right? One way or another, we won't hear that voice anymore at some later date. All right, Oaks, Pennsylvania. The town hall, moderated by South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem, because why not, began with questions from pre-selected attendees for the former president. So it wasn't even like, well, let's, it's difficult to get started again. They had a list of people and names to call on. They just didn't do it. Donald Trump offered some meandering answers on how he would address housing affordability and help small businesses. But it took a sudden turn after two attendees required medical attention. And that's in addition to the actual, he's not the host of it, that's Kristi Noem, but the candidate himself required medical attention. But they let that golden hour pass and played music instead. Later on, they'll say, we could have undone so much damage from that small stroke if we had gotten him to the hospital, but instead it was, you might as well play YMCA. There's just not that much there to save. Not only so much we can do here. The backup drive, it's full of the same garbage that was in there the first time. Now we can restore it, but it's not going to do you any good. Anyway, and so Trump, after jokingly asking the crowd whether, quote, anybody else would like to faint, and I see what he means, took a different approach. Let's not do any more questions. Let's just listen to music. Let's make it into a music. Who the hell wants to hear questions, right? He said, and I'm glad that they kept that the way it was. Let's make it into a music. And sometimes you drop a word here and there. It happens all the time here on this show, right? But make it into a music festival, a music listening time thing. I don't know how many words he dropped in that one. For 39 minutes, Trump swayed, bopped, sometimes stopping to speak, as he turned the event into almost a living room listening session of his favorite songs from his self-curated rally playlist. He played 9 tracks. He danced. He shook hands with people on stage. He pointed to the crowd. Oh, yes, that's right. You should see the video. And there is some of it embedded here in this Washington Post thing. But he has various crutches. Of course, he's got all sorts of verbal crutches for things. Like if he just says the completely wrong thing, he says, they told me I could say the opposite thing. And there's always that. And then, of course, 2 weeks, very, very soon, beautiful, beautiful, he's got his verbal crutches. But when he's standing there not knowing what to do with himself, as many people are, when they're on camera and they know it and they're not doing anything in particular, people get self-conscious. They go to, what kind of thing should I do? Move should I make? So I'm not just standing here frozen. And his thing is to point at people. They're always off camera, because the cameras are on him. And I do think that there's been a couple times when the cameras have been, behind him or showing something else, and it kind of has revealed he's not pointing to anyone in particular, but he'll make a very dramatic point at somebody and look in the direction of his pointing and then give the thumbs up and smile and then go on and then do it somewhere else. And there's nobody at the other end. It's just, this is a thing that I do to occupy space on the camera without looking like I'm frozen in the headlights. So a little bit of that last night as well. All right, so for 39 minutes he bopped, swayed, sometimes stopping to speak, shook some hands, played 9 tracks, he danced, he pointed to the crowd, right? Noam stood beside him, nodding with her hands clasped. Trump stayed in place on stage, slowly moving back and forth. He was done answering questions for the night. And then, of course, it comes time to discuss it on social media. So on Twitter, total love fest at the PA town hall. Everyone was so excited. They were fainting. Oh, this isn't even Donald Trump speaking. Sorry, but it might as well be. It's Stephen Chung getting slammed in prison. Total love fest at the PA town hall. Everyone was so excited they were fainting. So real Donald Trump, his Twitter handle, turned to music. He turned to mush. The promoters of the event turned to music. Campaign spokesman Stephen Chung wrote on X, nobody wanted to leave and wanted to hear more songs from the famous DJT Spotify playlist. A very North Korea moment there. Trump has long obsessed over his playlist. Colors of the curtains, the playlist at his campaign. Do you have a housing policy? Kill everybody. Do you have a crime policy? Kill everybody. Do you have a boost the population policy? Kill everybody. All right. Well, he's long obsessed over one thing, his playlist. And his aides have often described him privately DJing on his campaign plane or at his Mar-a-Lago club patio in Florida or in the sex dungeon or whatever. And by the way, DJing, like when you think of DJing, it's a DJ making choices and putting songs together that transition one to the other and in actively sensible ways to keep the party going or to change the mood or whatever. And Trump, and just doing it themselves, making the selections, doing the mix, adding whatever background beats that they want to use to make it more interesting and different and make the music their own. But Trump DJing is play Pavarotti, play YMCA and make it loud. Let's have more Ave Maria. That's DJing. He just screams out what he wants. That's being a fan in the audience of a DJ, screaming at a DJ, do the work for me. Not actually DJing. Now, it's also noted here, he has angered music artists such as Celine Dion and Pavarotti from death. He's very upset about this, who have requested that he stop playing their music at his campaign rallies. As Trump stood on stage in his oversized suit. Yes, good point. Not like David Byrne. Yeah, from the Talking Heads. Oh, my goodness. Am I forgetting everybody's name here? Yeah, I think I got it right. But not one of those. Yeah, David Byrne. All right. I'm like, all of a sudden, no, that's not his name. You have those momentary panic things. I could have taken 40 minutes to think about it, in all fairness. But no, not a David Byrne oversized suit. Just he's got a gigantic belly, so now he wears oversized suits so he doesn't look too fat. Oh, and his bright red tie, of course, down to his knees. Swaying back and forth, it was almost as if he were taking a trip back to decades past. Now we're on to something. Because that's kind of really what is happening here. We mentioned it the other day, and as a matter of fact, I'm going to weave together 40 minutes on this. I've got another piece that will complement that. I'll see if I can remember to go back to it afterwards. But everybody's noticing that he's kind of stuck in time. Taking a trip back to decades past, Trump's decision to cut short the question and answer portion of the town hall. I'm going to make that one up. Who the hell wants English? Let's make it a garble. That works. But his decision to cut it short and instead have the crowd stay and listen to his favorite songs was a somewhat bizarre move. Thank you very much. Gee whiz. Given that the election was only 22 days away, I mean, time is of the essence, right? This is like Senate floor time. Very valuable. You got a closing pitch to make. Who the hell wants to hear the pitch? Let's just play the music that has nothing to do with anything. Vice President Kamala Harris, of course, as it noted up above, has called Trump 78 unstable and questioned his mental acuity. They have embedded here, by the way, a moment from her campaign's stop in where? I don't know. Does it say? Erie, Pennsylvania. Or is it, let's see, Vice President Kamala Harris said on October 14th that former President Donald Trump is increasingly unstable and unhinged during a campaign rally in Erie, Pennsylvania. Okay, that's good. So they were both in Pennsylvania, just making sure we had that right. Actually, if you even bother to look at the freeze frame, not the frozen candidate in, where were we? We've got to go back to the Oaks, Pennsylvania. Not the frozen candidate in Oaks, but the freeze frame of the video that's embedded of Kamala Harris doing this thing. She's, giving her reasons as to why it is that so many people say he is, as she says, unstable and unhinged. And she just plays a clip of him talking and pitching his, new plan to kill everybody, deport everybody, kill everybody. Let's get violent. Let's arrest everybody who opposes me. She just plays the clip, his own words. It's an interesting tactic all by itself, right? Giving over sort of a portion of your own closing argument rally to the other guy. But when the other guy's closing argument rally lines are in fact demonstrative of his being unstable and unhinged, I guess it makes a certain amount of sense. Although, I have to point out, as Sarah Posner did on Blue Sky, if I can find it with relative ease, I'm not certain that I can, but she was pointing out that, here it is, it's somewhere in here. What example did she grab? Oh, well, the Washington Post's thing, right, yes. Someone has to do it, she says, and it's the Washington Post's, I don't know whether it's on Twitter or Blue Sky, but she's grabbed the screen here of the post, that is to say the post on whatever social media was, of the Washington Post saying, trying out a new tactic in Western Pennsylvania, Harris ordered her aides to roll the tape on giant jumbotron screens inside the Erie Rally Hall to show clips of Trump making inflammatory statements and threats at his rallies and in a recent interview. Read more, watch the video, etc. And she's pointing out, well, it's good that she did it. Someone has to show, I guess, exactly what it is he's doing and how unhinged he is. But then she notes the word choice there, ordered, as if she's the authoritarian in all of this. The clip was supposed to show how he's, his brain is melting and he's going to govern if he ever takes power again. As an authoritarian, that is his intent. But she ordered her aides to show this. Well, she arranged with her aides ahead of time to do this. That's how come it worked. But, it's just interesting way of putting things. One of their both sides thing. Everybody's an authoritarian. We're being totally fair. So where were we with this thing? There is a clip of her showing the clip, which is of some interest. That'll be embedded there. You can take a look at it. Some in the crowd began to leave because he was done taking questions. They were there for that, sort of, I guess. They wanted to hear him speak. He wanted to play music. They have that mixtape in their car already, so we can beat the traffic. Let's get out of here. That happens at all his rallies. Some looked around, wondering whether he was done speaking for the night and how much longer the dance or sway session would last. And it actually does say that in the text of the piece. I didn't just insert or sway session. Many stayed holding their cameras and watched as Trump took in the music, at times looking over at a screen beside him that showed videos of James Brown singing It's a Man's World, and Sinead O'Connor, an interesting choice to make, performing Nothing Compares to You. Well, okay. The evening began to take a different trajectory when a man appeared to faint in the crowd. Trump paused his remarks. Attendees fanned the man and began to sing God Bless America. There's a lot of music going on here. As the man waited for medical help, Trump mused, while we're waiting, So we've had a beautiful evening, and I don't know if they could get this song up quickly, but if they could work really quickly backstage while we're waiting, Ave Maria. Yeah, what a crowd pleaser. The song began to play. Trump then resumed minutes later. By the way, it was an interesting choice for Ave Maria, but also Sinead O'Connor, and there's a little bit of strange, Catholic tensions going on there, but we'll let you work that out for yourself. Trump then resumed. Minutes later, another attendee needed medical attention, and it wasn't even Trump. Trump stopped again. Take your time, doctor. He said, I don't really want to do this. Take your time. And then he said, and Ave Maria began to play again, that's the Trump fainting song, I guess. What's that thing? The opera guy does the Trump fainting song. Anyway, Trump then quipped to the crowd, would anybody else like to faint? Please raise your hand. Let's do it now. That's actually all right. Trump then referred to a chart with immigration statistics. He's still trying to get the thing back on track. At this point knows where he's supposed to be and what he's supposed to be doing. So a chart with immigration statistics, which probably weren't true, that he credits with saving his life. My all-time favorite chart. And let's listen to Pavarotti sing Ave Maria. They gave me the Ave Maria with no voice. Oh, the musical, or rather the instrumental Ave Maria, is that what happened? The one with no singy guy. He then pointed to a Gold Star couple whose son was lost in battle, saying, that's for your boy, stand up. Okay, well, at least he had somebody to point to in that one. My all-time favorite chart, I guess when he credits the chart with saving his life, is that one, did he have the chart with him at Butler, and that made it harder for the would-be assassin to get a clear shot at him or something like that? It's probably what it is. There's a link that explains it. He briefly returned to talking about the election and the importance of winning Pennsylvania, after Noam, who was there for no real reason, gave Trump the option of closing with a specific song, or taking two more fast questions. He addressed one of his aides. So, Justin, how about a couple of really beauties? Not real beauties, but really beauties. And we'll sit down and relax. And then the story at that point is illustrated with an embedded photo of Trump's teleprompter on the stage, which says, please do two more questions before music. But that's like telling Trump, do not congratulate. And, of course, he does the opposite. It was time to listen to Andrea Bocelli's Time to Say Goodbye. Okay. After listening to James Brown, Trump began to speak again, as if remembering that he was still at an event that was billed as a town hall. This is the most important election in the history of our country, Trump said, once again accusing Democrats of weaponizing elections, however that's supposed to go. But then he went back to his music. Those two people that went down are patriots, and we love them. And because of them, we ended up with some good music, right? He asked. So, play YMCA. Go ahead. Let's go nice and loud. Here we go, everybody. Noam interjected. Thanks, Christy. Thanks for letting us know that here we go. The crowd cheered and danced to the Village People song from the 1970s, which celebrates gay cruising culture, but, whatever. Noam put her hands up in the shape of a Y, but then couldn't figure out the MCA part. I mean, it's a very common thing. And, I guess if you do the dance enough, you know it by heart. But if you're trying to figure it out in real time, and is the YMCA supposed to look to me like a YMCA, or am I doing it over my head for the benefit of the crowd? It's very confusing. She put her hands up in the shape of a Y. The song was ending. Trump mouthed the words, nobody's leaving. Okay, nobody's leaving. What's going on? There's nobody leaving. Keep going, he said, as Rufus Wainwright's version of Hallelujah played next. All right, turn that music up. Turn that up. Great song. Then it was Nothing Compares to You by Sinead O'Connor, An American Trilogy by Elvis Presley, Rich Men North of Richmond by Oliver Anthony. Trump stood and swayed. Oh, boy. Civil War anthems. Terrific. As November Rain by Guns N' Roses played, he walked off the stage. He spoke to attendees on his way out as Memory, as in memory care, from the musical Cats played in the background. If only I had memories. All right. So there you go. A good long segment on Trump melting down, losing his mind, losing his place in the middle of his own town hall. And honestly, if you get a moment to take a look at him, quote unquote, dancing, it's kind of worth the time. All right. As I mentioned the other day, there's this author takes notice of the fact that Trump's brain seems to be stuck in a different era entirely. I think we discussed it in terms of his telling people that the American automobile industry, under Trump, it's going to be great again, make automobiles great again, and we're going to go back to making cars like we did 40 or 50 years ago, except that, 40 or 50 years ago now is a particularly, a downtrend, you might say, for American muscle car culture. The Plymouth Reliant K comes to mind. AMC Gremlin. Not really super, assertive muscle cars. He's thinking of what muscle cars were 40 to 50 years ago when in the time period he's stuck in, the time period he thinks it still is, the 80s and 90s, when 40 or 50 years ago cars at that point meant something in particular. And, they still do, but a different thing. But as it turns out, Paul Krugman has noticed the same thing. So perhaps when we return, we can read a little bit about that. In his piece, Trump has become unmoored in time. And this was written and sent out for publication before he realized that Trump had actually become unmoored in his own town hall. And so that just illustrates the point that much more. But he was having a good time this morning passing this piece around because it was timely about his not having any connection to time. So he makes the same observation with a couple different examples, and we'll read those after this and get ourselves back on track and bashing Trump for different reasons besides the one that came from last night. Wow, half an hour. Hi, everybody. It's me, David Waldman. Yes, the same guy who interrupts you all the time. Interrupting you one more time just to tell you again, another reminder that your contributions are what keep this show on the air, and Patreon.com, Patreon.com, is still among the easiest ways to make the sustaining subscription donations that keep us afloat. Are you ready for the pep talk about how our Patreon campaign is still going strong and growing? Well, too bad. Yeah, the plain fact is we actually are headed in the wrong direction, and whereas we once had about 175 monthly patrons, we're now actually down below 150. Time to recruit some more. Not exactly the kind of news I wanted to share, but there it is. For those of you in a position to support the show, Patreon.com does make it easy to make those secure, recurring monthly contributions to do so. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. We've been through a lot together. The worst of the pandemic, we hope. The worst of the insurrection, we hope. So go ahead and treat yourself. You don't need an excuse. Give yourself the gift of a little something you enjoy in life. Support the show. And of course, if you happen to prefer using PayPal or even the Square Cash app, we're up and running on those options too. So thanks again, everyone, for all your support. We couldn't, or at least shouldn't, do it without you. Hope you'll be on board soon too. Thanks for all your support. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Net Roots Radio. We continue on with the, roundup of the, we got 10 minutes to go to equal the amount of time that Trump spent bobbing and swaying to music rather than conducting his town hall. So he's still got 9 minutes on us at the minimum. But instead, we'll read from Paul Krugman's piece here. Like I said, he's got a lot of other examples. Trump, I went to Time first. Trump has become unmoored in Time, not just Time Magazine, not unmoored by the fact that he thinks he's the Time Magazine Man of the Year, even though the magazine cover is fake and he hung it up in all of his golf clubhouses. Not that, but space-time, where the rest of us exist, and apparently he does not. I don't know. Anyway, Krugman notes that this is the second in an occasional series that, I don't know, I guess this means this is the second time he's written about Donald Trump's statements and language and what's at stake in the election. I don't know what to tell you about an occasional series. Whenever the spirit moves him. I don't say that it was necessary to note such a thing, but okay. Do you remember, he begins by asking, do you remember the California electricity crisis of 2000 and 2001? Just setting the tone here, setting the scene. Do you? Yes. I do. He does too. He says he does because he wrote about it a lot at the time and stuck my neck out by arguing, with the link and everything, based on circumstantial evidence, that market manipulation was probably an important factor. I guess he felt like he was all alone on that one before the proof came out, and maybe he was. One economist colleague accused me of going Naderite, interestingly, but we eventually got direct evidence of market manipulation. Tapes of Enron traders conspiring with power company officials to create artificial shortages to drive up prices. What do you know? He was right. Memories of that episode made me more sympathetic than many economists to claims that price gouging played a role in recent inflation, although I don't believe that it was a major driver. At this point, however, it's all old history. I mean, this is, a little bit of self-plaudits here, but well deserved. It's I guess probably true that he was all alone for a moment on the Enron thing, and then the evidence broke out. And a good observation to say, yeah, the lesson I learned from that is, as much as people would likely say, oh, no, you're crazy, saying it's price gouging, it's clearly supply chain and inflationary and da-da-da-da-da. Well, it's happened before. Okay, so good. Now moving on to the current topic at hand, which is this. At this point, however, it's all old history. Aside from some blackouts during the 2020 heat wave, California hasn't had major electricity shortages in decades. But don't tell Donald Trump. On Thursday, in the course of a rambling and at times incoherent speech to the Detroit Economic Club, he declared, "We don't have electricity. In California, you have the brownouts or blackouts every week. And blackouts, the place is stone cold broke. No electricity." This isn't true. And it wasn't true when he made similar assertions last year. And 39 million Californians can tell you that it isn't true. But in Trump's mind, apparently that long ago electricity crisis never ended. And he's got nothing to say, I'm sure, about the recent ones in Texas and still ongoing ones in Texas. Or hell, the still ongoing ones in Puerto Rico. Anyway, there's an obvious parallel with Trump's language on crime. In big cities, he has asserted, you can't walk across the street to get a loaf of bread. You get shot, you get mugged, you get raped, you get whatever it may be. He ran out of crimes that he knew the names of. Now, there was a time when America's big cities were quite dangerous. I remember the days when major parts of New York, as he says, were more or less no-go zones. But that was long ago. There was a huge decline in the national murder rate between the early 1990s, when he checked out mentally, and the mid-2010s, when he apparently was getting set to become president. But what the hell? Why pay attention to anything that's happening in the country? A surge during Trump's last year in office seems to be fading away, thankfully. New York's transformation into one of the safest places in America has been especially spectacular. The city had 83% fewer murders last year than it did in 1990, when Trump's brain froze, I would add. And neither I nor my neighbors seem terrified about crossing the street to buy bread at my local bodega. When was the last time Trump went anywhere to buy bread? When was the last time he crossed the street to buy anything? Anyway, no doubt much of what Trump says about crime is a cynical attempt to stir up fear for political gain. That's certainly true of some of his other untrue assertions, like his false claims that the Biden administration is refusing to aid Republican regions devastated by hurricanes and has diverted disaster funding to migrants. I don't know whether Trump is aware that he's wrong to claim that all the jobs created under President Biden have gone to, quote, illegal migrants. But I'm fairly sure that he doesn't care whether what he's saying is true. By the way, I think pointed out just the other day, and I don't know whether I put it in Pocket or not, but I think I saw via social media at some point a report that everyone should note, just sort of mentally, that during the period when Trump was improperly, illegally, and unsecurely holding on to highly sensitive secret documents from the government that he had stolen from the White House after leaving, I think the figure that I saw put up there was that some 300 plus foreign employees at Pervalago roaming the place. He brings in regularly seasonal workers from overseas all the time, and something migrants, and they're taking all the jobs, but they're taking all the jobs at his weirdo sex club, and he knows that. And but just on top of that, foreign workers roaming around with keys and access to things that the average member of the public doesn't have access to, or even members of his stupid sex club. But, if you turn the corner, we might find nuclear secrets, and maybe we want to, photograph them and send them back to somebody. Maybe some foreign government has even gotten the idea that they could just send somebody there. They're not sending their best, but they're sending their spies. And listen, I need you to work as a waiter in Pervalago for the summer. That's the assignment. Take a picture of any documents you find if you go to the bathroom. Anyway, right, back to where Paul Krugman left off here. It's hard to escape the sense that there's more than cynical calculation going on in some of Trump's whoppers, that he may actually believe some of what he's saying because he has become unmoored in time. On crime, for example, my guess is that Trump's mind is still, in Trump's mind, it's still 1989. The year he took out a full-page ad demanding that New York State bring back the death penalty after the rape of a woman who had been jogging in Central Park, for which 5 teenagers were wrongfully convicted. And, of course, he insisted on executing them, and he still insists on executing them despite the fact that they've been exonerated by DNA evidence. Electricity supply and urban crime aren't the only issues on which Trump's image of America seems stuck in the past. During his Detroit speech, the former president did something unusual for a candidate one might have expected to flatter the voters in an important swing state. He insulted the city that was hosting him, declaring that if Kamala Harris wins, our whole country will end up being like Detroit. To Detroit, he is telling people this. Now, I guess it's a cynical calculation there, too, that it might be, these are white people who live in the affluent suburbs of Detroit who have come into Detroit for a major event and then will flee Detroit immediately afterwards. That could be. Of course, by the way, have you seen or heard the response to that? The Kamala Harris campaign quickly rolled out a response ad, just basically, doing good Detroit cheerleading work and saying, a whole country will be like Detroit. I love the ending line of this one. They should be so damn lucky. And I forget exactly how they put it, but it's about that. I don't know exactly what the phrasing is, but they should be so damn lucky. Well, that was a pretty powerful answer. Won't faze Trump any, but he doesn't even know what year it is. Actually, Krugman continues, that would be great if true. See, same thing. They should be so lucky. Detroit has been experiencing a major economic revival, so much so that it has become a role model for struggling cities around the world and has been praised for its startup ecosystem. But I doubt that Trump knows or cares about any of that. And in his mind, Detroit is probably still the poster child for the industrial Midwest's economic struggles around, say, 2010. The point is, there's a pattern here. As many observers have noted, Trump routinely peddles a grim picture of America that has little to do with reality. What I haven't seen noted as much is that his imaginary dystopia seems to be, in large part, a pastiche assembled from past episodes of dysfunction. These episodes apparently became lodged in his brain, such as it is, I would say, and perhaps because he's someone who is not known for being interested in the details and who lives in a bubble of wealth and privilege, they never left. The thing is, Trump is fond of denigrating his opponent's cognitive capacity. Of course, what's missing there is, Paul needs to listen to me a little more closely. As we know, every Republican accusation is a confession. There's a catchphrase, Paul. You can use it. Trump is fond of denigrating his opponent's cognitive capacity. He has called Harris mentally disabled and a dummy. He has called for CBS to lose its broadcasting rights over a 60 Minutes interview with her, one that was edited in a routine way, in which Harris, a former prosecutor, came across as, well, pretty smart, whatever you may think of her policies. But what would Trump say about an opponent who, like him, seems stuck in the past, who routinely describes America in ways that suggest he doesn't know what year it is? Well, you know how he'd describe that. That person's stuck in the past. They don't even seem to know what year it is, with no sense of irony or self-awareness. I'm sure he would do it exactly that way. All right. I don't, I'm wondering whether I can, probably not all that quickly, find I think I, whatever the hell we're calling it, reposted it on Blue Sky yesterday. So it might be that a quick skim through the feed. There it is. Yeah, right. Grudgy, our good friend Grudgy, has Grudging One, but is it just Grudgy on Blue Sky now? Has found this thing from Forbes.com saying that Mar-a-Lago sought, 380 foreign workers during the time that Trump had those documents stashed away. I can't actually read the piece because it's a subscription thing. By the way, and I don't know if it's coming across the microphones, but apparently 2 or 3 neighbors have decided that now would be a great time to replace their roofs. So a little bit of roof nail pounding going on in the background here. It makes sense. There was a major hailstorm in the area, and then all the roofers came through and convinced everybody that they needed new roofs, and so the whole neighborhood is getting them. We're not, because the damage wasn't that great, and also our roof, we're in the middle of the lifespan of our roof here, and we didn't really want to jack up the insurance rates, but whatever. We'll see. If KITM World Headquarters begins leaking at some point, I guess then we're in for it. But anyway, that's the rattling and cacophony going on in the background. Why don't we just turn it into a music, and then we can do that instead? Much more pleasant. All right. I think we're done with the Trump has lost his mind stuff, I guess. But there's still, we're never really fully done with that. So there are a couple other Trump-related items. Might as well make it a music of Trump cognitive decline for you. The Boston Globe has this subscriber-only piece that we can sneak by, I think, in pocket. And let's see, did we have the whole thing? Yeah, a good reminder of something we observed the other day, I guess toward the end of the Olympic Games, when we realized, oh, yeah, with the Olympics coming back to the U.S., being in Los Angeles next time, but also hosting the World Cup in a couple of years as well. This will all fall during the next presidency, and it would be imperative that we not embarrass the United States by putting Donald Trump up front as head of state during these things. But there's a couple of one other additional celebration. America's 250th birthday, as they put it here. Now, 250th is, there's a particular word for it that I don't really remember offhand, except that it's long and complicated. And while I can look it up and then say it, semi-quincentennial, 250th. I remember the bicentennial well enough. Trump's brain is mostly still stuck in bicentennial America, but upcoming is the semi-quincentennial, and there's very little chance that Donald Trump would be able to use that term, but it will probably become important, and America should learn that term. I don't know that anybody knew bicentennial any more than semi-quincentennial, although that is a dumber word. And but America learned bicentennial when necessary. But that's coming up. And then, of course, the World Cup, as we mentioned, and the Olympics. And it's, worrisome. America's 250th birthday, the World Cup and the Olympics. The vibes promise to be much different under Trump or Harris. Like, which one do you want out there as the president fronting the United States for the world in in the middle of all this, especially the semi-quincentennial, during which, of course, he'll be called upon, I assume, to make a very widely viewed July 4th speech. And you remember what he did with the last one that was widely viewed. The Continental Army took over the airports. They rammed the ramparts. They took over the airports. They did whatever was necessary. So, yeah, we're not going to want that to happen. So, another good reason, of course, to vote Harris. But here is who's written the piece here in the Boston Globe. I'm going to need to double check by opening up, and I wonder if it'll let me get to it. This is no help because I've not seen this name before. Jim Putzangara? Oh, my goodness. Well, sorry, Jim, but people who are more familiar with your writing up in Boston probably know how to pronounce that off the bat. But okay, let's get to the words instead. That's probably more reliable. I'll be able to pronounce 9 out of 10 of those. In 1975, after years of deep political division, social unrest, and economic struggles, President Gerald Ford, eaten by wolves at that point, traveled to the Boston area to rally Americans around an approaching milestone, the nation's 200th birthday. It is a time to place the hand of healing on the heart of America, not division and not blame, Ford declared in a speech at the foot of the Old North Bridge in Concord, kicking off the more than year-long bicentennial celebration by commemorating the start of the American Revolution there. The audience of about 75,000, that's pretty impressive, really, included people protesting Ford's economic and international policies, the Globe reported at the time. But Americans ultimately rallied around the grand birthday bash, featuring a rare multi-city visit by Queen Elizabeth, a majestic parade of tall ships in Boston and New York harbors, and a steam-powered Freedom Train carrying the nation's historical treasures around the country. Plus special bicentennial quarters. That was what stuck with me. That's the real mark of the bicentennial in my mind. The festivities culminated with a massive coast-to-coast Independence Day celebration that included a speech by Ford at Independence Hall in Philadelphia. The next president probably will play a similar high-profile role during equally tumultuous times as America celebrates its 250th birthday on July 4th, 2026. On top of that, Kamala Harris or Donald Trump, both big sports fans, will be in office as the United States hosts the 2026 Men's World Cup along with Canada and Mexico. And that'll be an interesting cooperative venture for which, again, you definitely do not want Donald Trump in charge. They're not sending their best. Mexico, they're full of criminals and rapists, but we're also co-hosting. Okay, great. And the summer 2028 Summer Olympics, of course, in Los Angeles. The unprecedented trio of major events in one 4-year term offers whoever wins the November 5th election the ability to shape the image they project to the country and the world during a time when American history and sports have become cultural flashpoints. And particularly with the so-called semi-quincentennial celebration. Semi-quincentennial. Wow. All right, it's in there. Those images could vary widely depending on whether Harris or Trump is in office. It's a gigantic difference of how U.S. history will be perceived on the 250th anniversary, depending on who's president, said Douglas Brinkley, a presidential historian at Rice University. Like, for instance, if the 250th anniversary of American independence was being marked in an authoritarian dictatorship by a fascist president who had seized power despite having lost the election 3 times in a row and being impeached twice and being convicted on at least 34 criminal counts, not to mention the others that's still outstanding, well, that would be different than say, hey, congratulations to making it to 250 years of democracy, United States of America. Let's hear it for President Kamala Harris. You think that could cast a pall over things? Trump has a very Mount Rushmore approach to things, says Brinkley, the historian. Approach to things, great men chiseled in stone or marble. Harris will be more multicultural and inclusive. Well, all right, yeah, true. That's one way of looking at it. The other is one will be a fascist dictator who's deporting people and murdering them by the hundreds, and the other would be a regular president, continuing the tradition of the last 250 years. But whatever. Ford used the bicentennial to try to unify the nation after the Vietnam War and the Watergate scandal that elevated him to the Oval Office after President Richard Nixon was forced to resign, Brinkley said. One hopes that we can pull together as a country and not be divided in a cultural war, Brinkley said of America's 250th anniversary. That would be nice. The president ostensibly has a limited role in those upcoming major events as they are all run by organizations outside the direct influence of the White House. But, in Trump's view, nothing is outside the direct influence of the White House. One, the nonpartisan U.S. Semi-Quincentennial Commission, created by Congress in 2016, has already started a series of events in conjunction with state and local organizations, including the 250th anniversary of the Boston Tea Party last December. All right. This summer, the commission named former Presidents George W. Bush and Barack Obama and former First Ladies Laura Bush and Michelle Obama as honorary national co-chairpersons. That is interesting all by itself. I wonder whether if Trump were not currently running for re-election, whether he would be the Democratic representative or the Republican representative in this. They clearly need a former president of each party, and ordinarily you'd probably go with the most recent, but they skipped right over him and went back to George W. Bush. And Joe Biden is busy, of course, currently as the president. And so I guess they thought it was the way to get away from immediate electoral politics was to throw it back a little further because Trump is running now. But I wonder if he were retired, whether they would use him. I mean, it would be a real embarrassment. I mean, do you really want an insurrectionist as the Republican representative in this commission? I would think no. We anticipate that the future president will be very much engaged, said Commission Chair Rosie Rios, who served as U.S. Treasurer during the Obama administration. America's 250th anniversary is on Trump's radar. If elected, Trump promised to convene a White House task force to coordinate with state and local governments on a year of festivities leading up to July 4th, 2026. That's a nice promise, but there already is one. He also said he wanted, and it started 10 years ago, he also said he wanted to create a great American state fair in Iowa to showcase the glory of every state in the union, except we're going to do it in one of them for some reason. Host a sporting contest for high school athletes called Patriot Games. That's terrific. Why not just call them Hunger Games and leave it at that? And sign an executive order to create a National Garden of American Heroes, which he proposed in his first term. Everybody needs a national garden. As we chart a course toward this is Trump. As we chart a course toward the next 250 years, let us come together and rededicate ourselves as one nation under God, Trump said. What a meaningful phrase. The other part was rededicate ourselves, certainly supposed to harken back to the Gettysburg Address, but then it ends with the other lengthiest segment of Americana he's ever memorized. Not that he'd memorized the entirety of the Gettysburg Address, but I remember there's a 4-score, and there's of the people, by the people, for the people. And then I also remember one nation under God, but that's the Pledge of Allegiance, as his Bible illustrates amply. Trump campaign spokespeople did not respond to email requests for comment. Matthew Spalding, who was executive director of the President's Advisory 1776 Commission, and you can't even invoke 1776 anymore because the other side has tried to steal and politicize that. 1776 is their radio code word for insurrection at the Capitol. But Spalding was executive director of the President's Advisory 1776 Commission, the one that Trump created in late 2020 to restore, quote, patriotic education after the racial justice protests. Said Harris and Trump have different perspectives on the nation's founding that will affect what they emphasize in 2026. If Harris wins the election, now this is a Trumper speaking, her administration will embrace the revolutionary side of the American Revolution. Well, yeah. in order to replace, he says, though, 1776 with a progressive agenda of identity politics. That comes, again, from Spalding, a constitutional government professor at Hillsdale College, which isn't really, an actual college. It's just a right-wing propaganda mill. You all recognize it. If Trump wins, we will see a celebration of the American side of the American Revolution. And of a nation that, despite its flaws and imperfections, has done more than any to advance the principles of 1776. Well, of course, the principles of 1776 was the American Revolution principles. What other country would we look to advance the principles of 1776? That doesn't mean anything. In other words, mumbo jumbo, garbage. Harris hasn't spoken publicly about the 250th anniversary, and her campaign declined email requests for a comment. Why look ahead? Let's focus on winning this election first. But Libby Schaaf, a former mayor of Oakland, California, and a longtime friend, agreed Harris's approach would be much different than Trump's. I think President Harris would infuse the celebration with joy and reverence. Trump would infuse it with bombastic superiority, Schaaf said. Freedom has been her calling card. It's been kind of her highest value in this campaign, and what better way to put that fully on parade than America's own birthday party? She predicted that Harris would respect the extensive planning underway. That's probably true. Why not? Lean on it. Trump would undo it. I want tanks. There had to be tanks in this parade. He's done it before. John Garrison Marks, Director of Research and Strategic Initiatives at the American Association for State and Local History, agreed. If Harris wins, I think we can probably expect a continuation of the work that the commission is already doing, especially its emphasis on creating the largest and most inclusive commemoration in American history, Mark said. Now, if Trump wins, I don't think he will completely upend all the work that the commission has done to this point, but he may lean more into the celebratory aspect of the commemoration, which, I don't think they mean he's going to turn it into a music. It's a coded answer, and looking not to get himself in trouble, but give a truthful answer. Marx expects Trump's would focus on one big event, like his Independence Day commemorations in Washington in 2019 and at Mount Rushmore in 2020. I think the 2019 one is the one with they rammed the ramparts and took over the airports. The World Cup in 2026, with a match scheduled for July 4th in Philadelphia, will amplify the attention on the United States during its historic anniversary, and 2 years later, the next president will have the honor of formally opening the Summer Olympics in Los Angeles. Thank you for coming. It's too bad you didn't send your best. You're all going to be deported. Happy Olympics! That's basically his speech. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. All right, let's see. A few more items still in pocket on this one from, are we still reading the Boston Globe thing? Or, I forget what publication we're in on this one now. I think so. Yeah, America's 250th birthday, the World Cups, the Olympics, all the vibes promise to be much different under Trump or Harris. So let's see. We were just reading about the World Cup having a match in Philadelphia on July 4th this time around. So it'll be a real showcase. Let's see. Aside from attending some World Cup matches or Olympic events, as previous presidents have when the events have been held there would be no other official role for Harris or Trump. But, if you can turn a town hall into a music, you can turn everything else into a celebration of Donald Trump instead. I want every ticket has to be signed with Donald Trump on it. Could be anything he might use for self-promotion. But Trump has inserted himself into sports controversies in the past. He's inserted himself in all sorts of things in the past. And some of them have ended in civil liability. But whatever, it should have ended in criminal liability, but it took too long. At any rate, when he was president, Trump publicly feuded with some high-profile professional athletes when players kneeled during the national anthem to protest America's racial disparities. Why, just this summer, Trump falsely claimed 2 female gold medal boxers at the Paris Olympics were men after public scrutiny regarding their gender. And he called the opening ceremonies of those games a disgrace because of a scene involving drag performers that conservatives claim mocked the Last Supper. The ceremony's artistic designer said it was an interpretation of a scene involving the Greek god Dionysus. But why would Trump acknowledge that? We won't be having a Last Supper as portrayed the way they portrayed it the other night, Trump said on Fox News of the LA Olympics opening ceremony. Public criticism like that from Trump is unlikely to affect these major global sporting events, said Dan Leibowitz, executive director of the Center for the Study of Sport in Society at Northeastern University. I don't really know why there is such a center, but there is one, and I'm sure it's great, but they do need to wake up to the fact that, I think they would find in studying sport in society that authoritarian, totalitarian dictatorships, fascist countries tend to approach sporting events slightly differently. I think you'll find that, in fact, public criticism from a totalitarian dictator would affect major global sporting events being held in the United States. And I think if you had that chance to do that one over again, you probably would if the question was put to you that way. But I think you're trying to sane wash, normalize, what have you, and maybe you're also hedging your bets. Like, I don't think it's going to affect the major event because Harris is going to win. So there's that. But let's see. I think this is interesting. He's being wishy-washy about this, I think. I think the world already has an opinion of Trump. They've gone through a presidency of his. However he chooses to embrace the Olympics, I don't think it's going to change the messaging of the larger games. He said, in my mind, the games are bigger than that. The World Cup is bigger than that. Well, did the Berlin Games get a different reception from the world and in history because Hitler was presiding over their opening? Yeah, they did. It's actually a major part of the way history interpreted the 1936 games, but whatever. He's just looking to not cause trouble with the would-be dictator, and maybe that's wise. It's just not historically accurate. All right, let's see. Other stories that we have tucked away in Pocket, if Pocket decides to cooperate and come back. Yeah, there we go. Let's see. There's a couple of other interesting items on the man. And I know we should be focusing on how Kamala Harris is charging ahead and, I don't know, surging in the polls. Well, we're going to have to wait to find out whether that's actually the case when Greg rejoins us on Wednesday. But so I do feel bad that there's not more focus on it, on what she's been doing. But I did wonder about this the other day as she's been running around doing the podcast scene, right? Like, I wondered, well, what would happen if they said, hey, Kamala Harris wants to come on your podcast? There's no reason in the world that they would identify our podcast for her to make a stop. But if they did, for some reason, like they're really digging down into the layers and looking actively for places that they can show up and surprise people. This would be a big surprise. But I don't know. I mean, you don't want to say no to it, certainly, right? It would be a huge moment for growth, I guess, of the show. But it occurred to me, like, well, what questions would I ask her? And I realized, I don't know. I don't think I actually have any questions for her. I mean, we'd have to come up with some. And this is part of the reason why we don't very frequently do these guests or guests of any kind. But you always eventually find some questions. I guess I'd be like, well, we'd make it a conversation. But, I mean, we kind of know where she'd go with the discussion because she has an agenda and wants to hammer home a message, and we'd let her do that. And I suppose questions would arise around the periphery, but in terms of planned questions, like, you know what? I don't care. I mean, look, I'm going to vote for you. We can't have this fascist idiot be president. I know that's not necessarily the ringing positive endorsement you were looking for, but there's plenty to recommend your plan or your approach to the presidency, like actual plans for things that are realistic and don't target people for destruction and misery. And I'm definitely, okay with that. That's where I'd rather be. But questions for Kamala Harris, I don't know what I would ask her, but I'm sure we'd see in the moment. But at any rate, she's not coming on the show, so we don't have to worry about that. But I did wonder about that as she's making these various stops around the country. But this other item that I have, again, it's more about Trump. And there's a lot of things There's a lot of angles to cover this idiot from. This one I thought was interesting. I don't know what prompted this, but I guess somebody else must have fallen into the news on the wrong side of the law in order to do this. From NewJersey.com, what do they call this? Online site combining the newspaper reporting of several of the major papers in New Jersey, and I've never really been 100% sure which one drives it. Back when I lived in northern New Jersey, our local daily paper was the Star Ledger, and I think this is a combined effort of the Star Ledger and the Bergen Record. The Newark Star Ledger wasn't in the title of the paper, but that's where it was based out of. And then the Bergen Record, and there's a couple other papers, of course, down further to the south, central New Jersey, Asbury Park Press, and then it kind of becomes Philadelphia Inquirer territory, I guess. But I was gone by the time NJ.com took over. I've always been kind of confused about who runs it, and I've never cared to look into it. It doesn't really matter a great deal, but I try to tell you what the source is. How many people, they ask, pardoned by Trump? You remember how his horrific abuse of the pardon power, and just wait till you see what he does with the next one. How many people pardoned by Trump later committed more crimes? Here's the latest count. And this is published yesterday, so we'll see if it reveals how this made it back into the news. Lauren Sforza is the author of this piece. A number of people. What is the number? Oh, I don't know yet. But a number of people granted clemency by former President Trump have later been charged with more crimes, according to an analysis from the New York Times. I guess we could have just gone straight there, but I don't know. This must be what I saw reporting it on social media, so I grabbed it. And by the way, I love the start of the thing, like a number of people. I know it's a number. It's not zero. And it's not one, because if they just say a person, in that case, they would just say a person who was pardoned has committed an additional crime. And of course, if zero had done it, well, then there's no story. But the number has to be greater than one in order for something to be of interest here. The New York Times reported that Philip Esformis, is that correct pronunciation, became the latest person pardoned by Trump to be charged with another crime over the weekend. Is he the second one just this weekend? No, I don't think so. The newspaper reported that a public records database maintained by Miami-Dade County showed that Esformis was arrested and charged with 2 felony counts that could lead to jail time. Oh my. Esformis is now the, ready for it, 7th person granted clemency by Trump who later was charged with a crime. According to the New York Times analysis, he is also the 3rd to be charged with a domestic violence-related offense, according to the report. So, of course, under normal circumstances, there's very tight screening for the use of the pardon power, and one of the things they're looking for is, are you going to embarrass this president by committing another crime after you've been pardoned for this one? And if the answer is yes, then they usually say, let's not use it. Let's not use the pardon power for this person. We want upstanding citizens who deserve the pardon. But Trump doesn't care. Okay, so he's the 3rd person charged with domestic violence, according to this report, who had previously been pardoned. The New York Times reported that Esformis, quote, verbally threatened a woman whom her relatives described as his wife. Yeah, so more weird for the campaign here as well. Who has to put it that way? Well, who is this woman that you threatened? Well, his relatives, yeah, described her as, his wife. So it's his wife? Well, there's some dispute about that, but that's the way the relatives describe it. Why the hedging? I don't know. Well, a woman, he verbally threatened a woman whom her relatives, not his, but her relatives described as his wife, as well as a second family member, and further intimidated them by breaking items on a table filled with glassware. according to the woman's relatives. And even that is a little weird and hedgy. So he broke glass and threatened them with broken glass or a broken bottle, like something like that. No, he broke an item on a table. Like a glass? No, but the item was filled with glassware. Filled with glassware. Like he broke, what exactly? I don't even know. I don't know. He broke a box that they keep the glassware. What even would be? I don't know. I'm sure once they name the item at some point, if they just showed me or told me what the item was. Oh, yeah. I could see how that would be filled with glassware. He broke a cabinet that held their wine cups, wine glasses. I don't know. I'm not certain what this is supposed to mean, but I'm not certain what it's supposed to mean that her relatives described this woman as his wife. The New York Times noted that Esformis's commutation was, quote, not recommended by the Justice Department. And I mean here, it's not just that, well, did the Justice Department recommend this? No, we didn't. It's that the Justice Department analyzed it and said, we give this a rating of not recommended, basically, just as many of the judges that he appointed were rated not qualified. Yeah, the Justice Department said, we do not recommend using the clemency power here, and was instead, though it was pushed for by influential figures and groups, including the Aleph Institute. What is that? I don't know. You can look it up and then tell me. I guess it won't tell me here. Esformis, a South Florida healthcare facility owner, was found guilty in 2019, quote, in the largest healthcare fraud scheme charged by the U.S. Justice Department at the time. He was charged in connection to making fraudulent claims to Medicare and Medicaid in 2016. By the way, very often the pardons and the clemency power are used for people who have served a significant portion of the time to which they've been sentenced, and it's believed to be in the interest of justice to let them, set them free again, but usually not intervening in the trial stage and saying, to hell with it, you don't even need to face charges. The Times reported that 6 others pardoned by Trump have also been charged with crimes since their commutations. Those people include former Trump advisor Stephen KGB Bannon, rapper Kodak Black, Eliyahu Weinstein, they're all linked so you can figure out who these people are, Jamie A. Davidson, and Jonathan Brown, which if he pronounces it like the senator, Braun. I don't know any of these people except for Stephen KGB Bannon, and I've heard some of these other names, but usually just because they're saying, hey, they committed crimes again after having been pardoned. This comes less than a month before Election Day, where Trump and Vice President Harris are locked in a close race for the White House. Trump has also said he would look to pardon the January 6th rioters who stormed the Capitol in 2021 and were charged with crimes. About 1,532 defendants have been charged in connection with the January 6th attack on the Capitol, according to the U.S. Attorney's Office in Washington, D.C. And Trump says, to hell with it, we'll pardon them as well, because what's the chances that those guys will go and commit more crime? And the answer is about 100%. But that doesn't bother Trump. Okay, just thought I would catch you up on that little statistic and see whether that made a difference in your life. There are other things to share with you, and let's see. Why don't we go to this one here? This looked like an important call out that I saw just the other day. It's from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. Can we get by that one, or is that one paywalled? Well, it's certainly paywalled. Even just trying to go back to the old version is difficult. So neither of them, they have a solid paywall, not easily bypassed by the pocket mechanism. I'd be interested in reading the story, though, if anyone else has got it. I wonder whether there's different other coverage available. Fulton County judge rules that election certification is mandatory in Georgia. We were looking for a ruling like this. Fulton County Superior Court Judge Robert McBurney is mowing the lawn outside the house now, muffling the roofing background noise, but not helping in terms of keeping things quiet around here. But this would be a great time to have Kamala Harris come on the program, by the way, and be interrupted by angry Carolina wrens, rather. It would be a California wren in honor of her visit, of course, and the lawn mowing going outside. So, where were we? Fulton County Superior Court Judge Robert McBurney presides, it says here in this caption of the photo, which is displayed, over the lawsuit's trial against the state election board's recently approved election certification rule on Tuesday, October 1st, 2024. That was when the photo is from. That's super helpful. But let's see whether perhaps looking for the judge's name here brings us to a report that we can read. But I think what's important from this news is the Georgia elections officials, the Republican Georgia election officials, have decided that they have leeway, that they have discretion in deciding whether or not to certify election results. If they feel like there's some questions remaining, that they've adopted rules and laws that purport to permit elections officials from withholding the certification. The judge is saying that's not actually how it works. Let's see, where shall we take our, is this local news? I guess there's The Hill, which, I'm sure did an admirable job in covering it, but there is also local news reports about it. Let's try this one here. Is the Jacksonville Journal Courier. And, I mean, I don't know whether that's Jacksonville, Florida, which is nearby, or is there a Jacksonville in Georgia as well? And perhaps it's them. I don't recognize the name of the paper, but we'll take it. It's closer than The Hill is to the action anyway. Georgia judge rules county election officials must certify election results. Kate Brumbach reports for the Associated Press. Okay, and then they're running it in the Jacksonville Journal Courier, so I guess it doesn't matter that much which one it is. But I'd be more comforted to know if I learned the name of a new newspaper in Georgia. Anyway, here's the story. A Georgia judge has ruled county election officials must certify election results by the deadline set in law and cannot exclude any group of votes from certification, even if they suspect error or fraud. Fulton County Superior Court Judge Robert McBurney ruled that no election superintendent or member of a board of elections and registration may refuse to certify or abstain from certifying election results under any circumstance. That's interesting. While they have the right to inspect the conduct of an election and to review related documents, he wrote, any delay in receiving such information is not a basis for refusing to certify the election results or abstaining from doing so. Georgia law says county election superintendents, which are a multi-member boards in most counties, shall certify election results by 5 p.m. on the Monday after an election, or the Tuesday if Monday is a holiday, as it is this year. Okay. The ruling comes as early voting began Tuesday in Georgia. Julie Adams, a Republican member of the Fulton County Election Board, had asked the judge to declare that her duties as an election board member were discretionary and that she is entitled to full access to, quote, election materials. Long and administrative task that attracted little attention, certification of election results has become politicized since then-President Donald Trump tried to overturn his loss to Democrat Joe Biden in the 2020 general election. Republicans in several swing states, including, it says in several swing states, including Adams, I see, is that, so there's no state named Adams, but Republicans in several swing states, whatever those swing states may be, including the Republican Julie Adams, there we are, refused to certify election results earlier this year. And some have sued to keep from being forced to sign off on election results. Adams' suit, backed by the Trump-aligned America First Policy Institute, we should talk about them, argues that county election board members have the discretion to reject certification. In court earlier this month, her lawyers also argued that county election officials should or could certify results without including ballots that appear to have problems, allaying concerns of a board member who might otherwise vote not to certify. Judge McBurney wrote that nothing in Georgia law gives county election officials the authority to determine that fraud has occurred or what should be done about it. Instead, he wrote, the law says a county election official's concerns about fraud or systemic error are to be noted and shared with the appropriate authorities, but they are not a basis for a superintendent to decline to certify. It's interesting. I guess it's a question of, sometimes it's a question with these Republicans of sort of the childlike view that they have of what authority they do and don't have. I'm the elections official. Of course, I should be able to refuse to certify. I see what you mean, except the county board of elections, I guess, isn't the ones empowered to actually investigate and make determinations about whether or not there was any fraud. There are criminal investigative authorities that take care of that. You simply say, well, these are the results that our local counters have come up with, and though they have problems or questions, they have alerted the authorities who will be investigating it. But I can tell you this is the count that our guys came up with, and these are the worries that they've noted, and I'm telling you, these are the figures and these are the problems, and now I hand it off to law enforcement. It's just as if, a person making a complaint that a neighbor is a noise nuisance, right? You tell the police about that and let them investigate, and you can tell them all the facts, but you can't just go arrest your neighbors or shoot your neighbors, despite the fact that people in Georgia apparently feel like they can do that from time to time. That's just, we have a sound effect for it.
That is not how this works!
Right. You actually just sort of turn over the information to law enforcement. They conduct an investigation. And despite the fact that you have something to do with the election certification process, it doesn't mean you're an investigative authority. You are just the person making sure that the counts are conducted by the book and reported to you, and that 2 + 2 + 2 does in fact equal 6. We got it. Sign the paper and send it on to somebody else. If you think that the total should be 7, let the authorities who have the ability to make that inquiry start making that inquiry. It doesn't all start and end with you. All right. So let's see. While we were there, we mentioned that there's the America First Policy Institute that was behind this lawsuit. And if I am not mistaken, and let's say that I'm not, I have something in pocket about them that we could probably be discussing with you. I may have to scroll a little bit to find it, though, but I don't think it's all that far back. And it's a rather lengthy read at that. Why don't we start in on it, and we'll take a break. We should probably wait until after the break to start it. That would make more sense. Is there something we can sneak in and get in here before we take our break? Probably not. This is only like a couple of short things. Oh, you know what? Here's something that I will note for the record. This, too, though, will probably take us over anyway. But just so that we have at least one item that isn't completely revolving around Donald Trump himself, although this next, I think the America First Policy Institute, though very much Trump aligned, doesn't have his name in it all that much. But here's a scary one I want to at least give you the headline of that I have from The Record. I don't know. The Record of what? The Record.media. Do not know exactly what that is. It bills itself as a news organization of some kind, but it's new to me. Here's a headline to ponder as we head into a 2-minute break. Anti-abortion group accused of electronically intercepting patients' exchanges with clinic. We know, of course, about these places that pose as crisis pregnancy centers. That's one thing. But this is taking it to a new level. A Massachusetts woman used an online platform to schedule an appointment seeking abortion medication from a local clinic in May, 2 minutes after she uploaded her insurance information to finalize the appointment. A representative from a nearby pregnancy crisis center, I think they're crisis pregnancy centers, I thought, but allegedly called the woman and, purporting to be the clinic, this is the key part, told her she needed to come in for an ultrasound prior to obtaining the medication. The crisis center, the Attleboro Women's Health Center, or AWHC, had intercepted the electronic communications between the abortion clinic and the woman, according to a lawsuit filed by the clinic for, F-O-U-R, for Women Health Services. AWHC allegedly called the woman, listed in the lawsuit as Jane Doe 6 on her personal cell phone, despite her never having provided the number to them, according to the suit. That is a little bit scary. People are already worried that their phones are listening to them or spying on them as it is, and now they're not only turning it over to weirdo business interests, they're turning it over to weirdo political interests as well. And intervening in her medical care. That's really rather astonishing. So they called her up, despite her never having given them her cell phone number. Jane Doe 6 is one of 4 known women, the lawsuit said, whose communications are believed to have been intercepted by the crisis center. What a strange event this is. And I feel like maybe we'll read over it and then turn our thoughts back to the idiot Trump.
Sup, fam? It's your boy Darwin, a.k.a. Darwin_Darko, a.k.a. the most reasonable man in America, a.k.a. KITM's senior black correspondent. You might remember me from such recordings as Spacemen vs. Space Cadets and We Need to Talk About Joe Biden. Today, I want to bring you good news about that thing you've been struggling with. Do you suffer from giving too much of a damn? Do you turn on the series of tubes and find yourself outraged at the particular way some news organization strung some sentences together only to realize, nope, this is not some fictional hellscape? Well, guess what? You no longer have to accept the life of giving too much of a damn. You can do something about it, because even you, yes you, can be a show contributor. Now I know what you're thinking. Hey, Mr. Most Reasonable Man in America, I'm not some professional podcast talking guy. Don't worry about it. Do you have a smartphone or some other electronic recording device? Well, that's all you need. You too can have a segment where you can read us an important article and give us your take. Read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Fair warning though, side effects may include general punditry, having opinions and hot takes, getting stuff off your chest, and hearing your own voice. If your recording lasts longer than 5 to 7 minutes, please consult kagrox@gmail.com. That's KAGROX@gmail.com.
All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Ed Roots Radio. I'm stuck now. I've intrigued myself with this story, but it's a good thing to take a detour once in a while and sneak in a little bit of news that hasn't gotten enough attention. But I'll continue on. It's, again, from therecord.media, with which I am not familiar, but our author is Suzanne Smalley, who the bio at the end informs us is a reporter covering privacy, disinformation, and cybersecurity policy for The Record. So we got that going for us, which is nice. Now we know a little bit about her beat anyway and where she's coming from in this coverage. But we continue on with this. In September, the federal judge presiding over the case ordered AWHC to stop intercepting the clinic's electronic communications. That would be a nice order. And refrain from contacting its patients, saying that 4 women, F-O-U-R, remember that's the name of the clinic, had demonstrated a sufficient likelihood of success on the merits of its claims. That's the threshold for getting a temporary restraining order. That AWHC violated the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, the Electronic Communications Privacy Act, and the Massachusetts Wiretap Statute. Things we don't really want violated all the time. Now here's some more on this. The big picture. The case is the latest example of how reproductive health patients face unusual digital privacy threats as they seek care. In February, Senator Ron Wyden released the results of an investigation his office undertook into how an anti-abortion political organization obtained mobile phone location data from a data broker in order to target 600 abortion clinic visitors in 48 states with anti-abortion ads. The senator asked the Federal Trade Commission and the Securities and Exchange Commission to take action, SEC really, against the company allegedly responsible for the scheme. If a data broker could track Americans' cell phones to help extremists target misinformation to people at hundreds of Planned Parenthood locations across the United States, a right-wing prosecutor could use that same information to put women in jail, Wyden said in a statement at the time. And I assume he wanted to focus on that rather than the other worry probably on his mind which is that you could end up selling that information to people who will murder you because you had an abortion. That is absolutely possible as well. And I guess if anybody with enough dollars can buy it, why wouldn't they do that? Why shouldn't we expect that to happen unless we put a stop to it? Or, of course, Donald Trump becomes president, and even if we do put a stop to it, he just pardons everyone who breaks the law that does put a stop to it. And it doesn't really appear that law is putting a stop to anything here, does it? The 4 women case is pretty unique, according to Daley Barnett, a staff technologist focused on reproductive health at the Electronic Frontier Foundation. As with Wyden's findings, the Massachusetts case is another example of how fraught and sensitive the issue space is, Barnett said. A staffer answering the phone at AWHC said defendants Catherine Roman, Nicole Cargis, and Darlene Howard did not want to comment for this story. In a court filing, the defendants argued that 4 women has, quote, no real evidence to support its allegations that the defendants engaged in illegal wiretapping and computer fraud. Next section here is a history of tension. 4 Women is the only clinic offering surgical abortion services in southeastern Massachusetts and is the only one of 3 providing abortion care generally, according to its complaint. AWHC has long sought to confuse 4 women patients and has historically deceived them when they inadvertently come into its offices, the 4 Women complaint alleges. The pregnancy crisis centers moved directly next door to 4 Women years ago, and AWHC workers allegedly patrol a shared parking lot, giving 4 Women patients anti-abortion literature, according to the court filings. AWHC is not a licensed medical facility, meaning it is illegal for it to provide ultrasounds, gynecological care, or any of the other medical services that it advertises, according to the complaint. You'd think they'd be more on top of that. It's so strange how slowly the wheels of justice really do turn. You can't just go out there advertising that you provide medical care if you're not a medical provider, right? Right. And yet people are doing it here, right? Seemingly right. Well, so where are the police in all this? I don't know. We don't know what to do. We don't know what we're entitled to do here. Or what's the harm? I don't know what the excuse is here. I really have no idea. Again, one of those things that I just thought they stopped this stuff. I just thought you could get arrested. I thought you'd get shot if you stormed the Capitol, right? Apparently all untrue. What an awakening. AWHC is not a licensed medical facility, which means they can't do the things that they advertise that they do. Why isn't it at least false advertising? I don't know why they can't stop this. 4 Women said that at least one prospective patient, that is the clinic named 4 Women, it's very confusing, honestly, but they said that at least one prospective patient who mistakenly ended up at AWHC was told that she could not obtain the abortion pill until after AWHC performed what its staff said was an ultrasound, the lawsuit said. And how interesting would it be if they were getting around it this way? We advertise that we provide ultrasounds, but we are not a medical facility, and it would be illegal for us to offer the ultrasounds, but we don't. We just fake ultrasound you and then show you a picture that we have had stored on our computer for forever of what looks even more like a baby than whatever might be going on in your uterus at the moment. But if you're like 10 weeks pregnant, we'll just show you a fully formed fetus that we have, a JPEG of on our computer and say, this is your ultrasound, and now you're supposed to feel worse about your abortion. That's the basic tenet of the whole thing. But you can't perform ultrasounds. You're under arrest for performing ultrasounds without a medical license. But we didn't. We used a fake machine that we told people was an ultrasound. And it might even have video of an ultrasound that we just play on this screen. I mean, if you hook it up, what's behind the black box? I don't know. We're telling you it's an ultrasound of what's going on inside of you. It is not. And so therefore you can't arrest us for not giving somebody an ultrasound. Maybe that's why we have other agencies involved here. Trade, FTC, SEC, what have you. All we can get them on is false advertising. Wow. Really? After the ultrasound, which is not considered medically necessary for abortion medication to be dispensed, and might not even be an ultrasound, the patient was allegedly told she needed to come back 2 weeks later for a second ultrasound in order to obtain the medication to terminate her pregnancy, the lawsuit said. So they're using the 2 weeks trick on her. 4 women said that AWHC's alleged tactics could have endangered lives because delaying reproductive care can be fatal in some pregnancies. Now, some unanswered questions is the next section. It's unclear if more than 4 patients could be the victims of AWHC's alleged interception of electronic communications between women and the abortion clinic. And this is where it's becoming so confusing, right? The name of the clinic, again, is For Women, not F-O-R, but F-O-U-R, For Women. And how many women are there alleging that they had been defrauded by AWHC? Well, unfortunately, the worst possible number, 4. Yeah, it would be worse if there were more of them, of course, but the most confusing possible answer, 4 women. So I have to differentiate for you every time I mention the word 4. Anyway, holy cow, it remains unclear how the communications between the clinic For Women and its 4 patients who are plaintiffs in this lawsuit were intercepted. An insider with access to 4 Women login credentials or a hack are both seen as possible entry points. Regardless, outside experts say the real-time nature of the interference makes it clear that there is a breach of some kind. The speed at which these patients were getting the AWHC contact after delivering those 4 Women booking forms, that's very clear indication of compromise, Barnett said. The clinic's cloud-based scheduling platform and healthcare management system are the most likely points through which AWHC may have accessed 4 Women patient information, according to a September affidavit submitted by a cybersecurity incident responder from the company Rapid7. Oh, thank God it's not Rapid4, right? For Women, the clinic, believes AWHC is hacking into and obtaining information from 4 Women's Clara or Athena platforms, its filings say. Citing Rapid7's findings, the abortion clinic acknowledges that it is not yet clear how AWHC infiltrated its systems, leaving the possibility of an insider threat open. 4 Women uses Clara Health for scheduling and Athena Health for managing electronic health records and other data. Clara is managed remotely, and the messages it enables are not visible or stored anywhere on the 4 Women website, according to an affidavit from the Rapid7 incident responder. Athena Health, like Clara, is cloud-based, and all the patient visitation schedules it stores resides on the platform, the Rapid7's consultant affidavit said. Rapid7 declined to comment when asked for additional detail. And lastly, confused patients. And hell, confused readers of this article. The alleged AWHC scheme used 2 tactics to achieve its goals of delaying or blocking women from seeking abortions. AWHC tries to prevent patients from attending the appointment they scheduled with 4 women, in some cases by hijacking the potential appointment, and in other cases by leading the patient to believe their existing appointment with 4 women has been canceled. A court filing alleged. Defendants hacking into 4 Women's confidential patient-client communication system to access that confidential information is a gross invasion of 4 Women's privacy and the privacy of the patients that must be stopped. 4 Women only learned about the alleged interceptions when patients reported they had heard from AWHC staffers who knew about their clinic appointments, according to the complaint. In at least 3 cases, AWHC outreach to women occurred in real time, directly following communications with 4 women, according to the filings. AWHC allegedly called one woman, Jane Doe 5, as she was in the middle of messaging 4 women to make her ultrasound appointment. Jane Doe 5 allegedly was left with the impression that she had scheduled an appointment with 4 women when she had in fact booked her appointment with AWHC, whose staff called her minutes after she began scheduling conversations with the clinic. The Pregnancy Crisis Center also allegedly contacted another woman on the day of her 4 women appointment when she had never before been in touch with AWHC, according to the abortion clinic's court filings, which said that AWHC staff pushed the woman to come to their offices instead. Patients not seeking abortions were also targeted by AWHC, according to the lawsuit. Minutes after a 4 women patient seeking birth control made an appointment with the clinic, she received a call from AWHC, whose staff allegedly led her to believe that she was speaking with 4 women. She was told that the clinic could not give her birth control and was instead invited to a diaper giveaway, according to the lawsuit. That's a fun time. Everyone loves going to those. Some of the women ensnared. She's not even pregnant, and they come to a diaper giveaway. But I'm looking for birth control. I'm not pregnant. Well, I don't know. Just hang on to the diapers until later, I guess. I don't know what the excuse for that is. Some of the women ensnared in the alleged scheme completed complaint forms against AWHC, saying they are willing to share their experiences with law enforcement. I was referred to 4 women by my OBGYN the day of my appointment. Attleboro Women's AWHC Health Center started calling my personal number. One of these women said, I haven't reached out to them at all. They tried setting me up with someone from their office to discuss my options after explicitly explaining I did not need their services. While this case is unusual, Barnett said it's nonetheless a reminder of why society needs to think bigger when it comes to protecting the privacy of those seeking reproductive health care. Health data now feels very sensitive and scary when health care is being criminalized across the country. And, of course, when people are looking to commit crimes of their own related to this information by simply murdering people who have perhaps sought health care that they disagree with the availability of. Very interesting. Certainly good thing to have on our radar and important to add, despite the fact that it took us off our train of thought. Anyway, let's see. What else can we share with you here? There's... I had some idea of sharing something from Talking Points memo about by David Kurtz writing, listen closely because what Donald Trump is saying is worse than ever, that his rhetoric is getting darker, but I do suspect you already know that that's the case and you probably have heard most of these examples, and so perhaps it's not the best use of our time to go over them. I don't think there are any undiscovered examples probably in there. But I will share with you this item that I just saw recently fly by on the social media. Drew Harwell sharing what he says is the full chilling quote from Trump's former Joint Chiefs of Staff chairman, the retired General Mark Milley, in Bob Woodward's new book, War. We had heard, of course, that he had said that Trump was a danger to the country and was a fascist to the core. But I think Drew is right in calling out the full quote as somewhat more chilling. And I guess now we're seeing drips and drabs of the book released. You know, it's good publicity for the buildup of the release. Here is a screenshot that he is sharing, and it begins here 2 days later. It says, on Monday, March 6th, 2023, I, and that's Bob Woodward in this case, attended a reception at the Willard Hotel in Washington, D.C., which is a haunted site, as you know, haunted by the ghosts of Trump's insurrection. But here it says, we got to talk, General Milley said as I approached him. Milley was not in uniform, but wearing a fashionable dark sports coat and plaid shirt. He had a freshly showered look and seemed relaxed. That's an interesting observation to make. Very odd, but okay. Though he stood barrel-chested with the ramrod straight posture of an army general. Milley was still worried about Trump. And now some quotes. No one has ever been as dangerous to this country as Donald Trump, Milley said. Do you see what this man is? I glimpsed it when I talked to you back for Peril, I guess his previous book, but now I know it. I now know it. That's what it said. I now know it. Okay. Milley had shared with me, Bob Woodward, his worries about Trump's mental stability and control of nuclear weapons for the book Peril that I co-authored with Robert Costa. Milley and I continued to talk, proving it was possible to have a very private conversation in the middle of a crowded room. And now this is where it really gets a little, worrisome. This is the quote. We have got to stop him, Milley said. You have got to stop him. By you, he meant the press broadly. He is the most dangerous person ever. I had suspicions when I talked to you about his mental decline and so forth, but now I realize he's a total fascist. He is the most dangerous person to this country. His eyes darted around the room, filled with 200 guests of the Cohen Group, a global business consulting firm headed by former Defense Secretary William Cohen. Cohen and former Defense Secretary James Mattis spoke at this reception. And then the part we've heard already. A fascist to the core, Milley repeated to me. I will never forget the intensity of his worry. Well, that does put a somewhat different shading on things, so I thought I might share that with you and let you know that it was just that frantic, I guess, when he made that statement to Bob Woodward. And I mean, really, it's interesting that they pulled out, he's a fascist to the core, and they shared that one, rather than, we have got to stop him. You, the press in general, have got to stop him. Well, that wouldn't be the call out by the press because, of course, they're not really doing their part in any of this as far as I can tell. But you know that already. All right. Let's see. What other items shall we share with you here today? I thought perhaps if we scrolled back. Yeah. You know what? Let's spend the closeout part of the program heading back to, I'm pretty sure that this story is about the very same group that we just read about. Is this right? The Alliance? Oh, no. Maybe it isn't. Oh, no. It was the America First litigation group that we were just talking about a while ago. What was that story in? I'm trying to look through what we've read already, but some of the things I've closed. But I thought we made mention of, was this it? Was it in the mandatory elections certification? Yeah, the America First Policy Institute. Okay, so it is, I think, a different group than I was thinking of. Yeah, here, this is a story about the Alliance Defending Freedom, although I have a feeling like they overlap quite a bit. But they're both very much Trump-aligned, but I guess two Trump-aligned litigation groups that are cause for concern for overlapping and yet still slightly different reasons. But let me give you this story, or at least what I can get on record of it in the last 10 minutes of the show from Slate. Back on October 10th, Susan Rinkunas, I'm guessing at that pronunciation, Rinkunas, ban abortion, end gay marriage, outlaw birth control. What's going on here? A powerful Christian conservative legal group is quietly reshaping America through the courts. Here's what it's after. I know you have an inkling of all that, and you heard it in the headline. Ban abortion and gay marriage, outlaw birth control. There's probably more, but let's get the details such as we can fit in the time allotted to us today. If you heard about a well-funded right-wing group with a detailed plan to achieve conservative policy goals, you'd probably think it's Project 2025. The Heritage Foundation-backed coalition has crafted an agenda for a second Donald Trump term that encompasses some truly unsettling policy ideas, and the amount of negative attention it's gotten from Democrats, celebrities, and even Trump himself has led its leaders to retreat from the spotlight, though they're not giving up. The thing is, there's a lesser-known organization that's already been working for decades to reshape America into a Christian nation, and will keep doing so regardless of who wins the presidential election in November. Right? You know, if Project 2025 is contingent on Trump winning or seizing power, you should be reminded that that doesn't mean that the agenda stops. It just means it moves into a different policy realm. Different people will be handling, although in many cases it is the same people. I'm sure people who are anticipating a role in government, thanks to their association with Project 2025, if denied a role in government somehow, will just move over to the Alliance Defending Freedom or the American Policy Institute, or whatever the hell it was that we were reading about a few minutes ago. And it was, yeah, the America First Policy Institute. Okay. But back now to the Alliance Defending Freedom. So they'll be working they have been working for decades to reshape America into a Christian nation. Will keep doing so regardless of who wins in November. It keeps racking up wins, unfortunately, at the Supreme Court. It's the Alliance Defending Freedom. And it may be the country's most sinister advocacy group that people have never heard of. We've heard of it. We just confuse them with the other guys all the time. The law firm, which is based in Scottsdale, Arizona, says its work, quote, advances the God-given right to live and speak the truth, unquote, even if they're lying, and publicly describes itself as, quote, the nation's largest legal organization committed to protecting religious freedom, free speech, marriage and family, parental rights, and the sanctity of life. ADF reported more than $100 million in revenue in both 2021 and 2022. And a lot of it, as we may recall, if I'm right about it, comes from Leonard Leo and his network of fundraisers as well. The organization has already made great strides in implementing its far-right agenda through its work on behalf of the Christian fundamentalist, anti-LGBTQ+, and anti-abortion plaintiffs. It was integral to the Supreme Court overturning Roe v. Wade in 2022, and now it's waging war against protections based on sexual orientation and gender identity. The group's CEO, Kristen Wagoner, says she believes that the 2015 marriage equality ruling should be overturned as well. ADF has also faced scrutiny for apparently manufacturing lawsuits involving Christian wedding vendors. We've heard these stories a lot, who object to same-sex marriage. One such case involving a website designer succeeded at the court in 2023, even though the plaintiff, Lori Smith, had never designed wedding websites. And a potential customer who contacted her turned out to be straight. ADF also seems to have invented a group from scratch to be the plaintiff in an ongoing case about an abortion drug. These actions aren't illegal, they should be, but they are deeply unethical, and there should be no jurisdiction for their case, and yet there is. The group is weaponizing the court system to remake laws despite no actual plaintiffs being harmed. ADF did not respond to Slate's multiple requests for comment made by phone and email, nor did it respond to a detailed list of questions. By bringing lawsuits before friendly judges, ADF can shape American society to match its vision for the nation. The group's individual cases may not appear all that connected, but when taken together, they paint a very clear picture. As Jillian Brandstetter, a communications strategist at the ACLU, put it, ADF is using the state to uphold the heterosexual, patriarchal, nuclear family as the primary, if not the only, way of living one's life. Here are 10 things we can conclude about the ADF's agenda based on its lawsuits, model legislation, and comments to the press. First, of course, and we'll try and get through as many of them as we can, ban abortion nationwide. And maybe I should read you the list, because that's all we'll probably have time for, and then go back to offer some of the proof if we can. 1, ban abortion nationwide. 2, reclassify birth control as abortion, and then ban that too. And I know a lot of people for years thought that, no, that's crazy. It's way too popular. They'll never get anywhere with that one. And as it turns out, abortion turns out to be way too popular for them to ban when it's put on state referenda. But birth control still in their sights regardless. They don't care about the popularity of it. 3, overturn marriage equality. That was hinted at right at the top. 4, require gender conformity for kids. Of course, no gender-affirming care for transitioning kids or adults for that matter, I'm sure. 5, erase trans adults from public life. 6, redefine how the law views sex. What do we mean here? Currently, sex and sexual relationships are protected under a right to privacy first established in the Griswold case. That too. That, of course, was regarding birth control, but I guess along the path of their elimination of birth control, why not erase the Griswold right to privacy as well? And then they can pry into anything, including, like, say, intercepting your calls with an abortion clinic and trying to get you to their crisis pregnancy center instead. 7, control family building. That is to say, in 2021 when the court sided with Catholic Social Services against the Philadelphia policy that foster agencies had to work with same-sex couples. ADF sued the Biden administration on behalf of a Tennessee organization for requiring that federally funded adoption agencies work with same-sex couples. We can undo that with lawsuits as well. Number 8, hand judges even more power. Here, we're talking about the overturn of Chevron deference in the relevant case, the Raimondo case. Number 9, demolish separation of church and state. You see, you've all been pretty wrong about the separation of church and state. As we understand it, the First Amendment mandates church influence in the state. We prefer it that way, and we think we can appoint judges that will agree with that and rule that way, even though it's the opposite of the state of the law. And then number 10, end DEI efforts and gut the Civil Rights Act. It's quite a collection of policy goals here for the ADF. I recommend then that you give it some time reading it over if we don't get a chance to review it on air at some point. Everything is sort of organized like Axios might do it, right? Each one of these numbered items has a case in which they're trying to do it, giving you the styling of the case so you can identify it and follow it, the stated goal of the case, a key quote from their filings in the case, and then the long-term goal. So very interestingly organized. Just wanted to sort of, again, put that on the record. Keep an eye on Alliance Defending Freedom, as well as the other group behind the Georgia lawsuit and all over the place, the America First Policy Institute. Know the players. They should be up there along with the Heritage Foundation and Project 2025 in your rogues gallery of the people trying to overturn the election, steal your freedom, and turn the country into, a Christian theological fascist dictatorship. If you don't mind my saying so. All right, we've rounded up an awful lot today. Tuesday, a freewheeling day. Got some afternoon errands to look forward to. We'll be back with you tomorrow. Of course, Greg Dworkin helping round up the news of the day and help you feel better about the polling, which you should be not paying attention to right now anyway.
NetworksRadio.com. You have been listening to Kagro in the Morning with David Waldman.
And you know what you can listen to next? Of course, the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy coming up next right here on Networks Radio. Justice Putnam takes you through the news of the day. What's up top here? John Roberts was shaken but not stirred over the backlash to his presidential immunity ruling. Yeah, big story. Haven't been able to really discuss it much yet. How could you be surprised by this? Well, maybe he's not that smart.